She mocked. "Are you keeping a spreadsheet of my schedule now?" Pathetic. When I asked about her late nights with a coworker, I said, "Good idea." My lawyer later presented the spreadsheet of her hotel receipts and Uber rides to her lover's house in divorce court. The conversation that ended my 12-year marriage happened on a Wednesday. It was late, almost midnight. I was in the living room, reading a book, when my wife, Lisa, finally came home. The scent of wine and restaurant food followed her through the door. It was the third late night at the office that week. For months, things had been off. Not in a loud, explosive way, but in a quiet, chilling way. The warmth had vanished from our interactions, replaced by a polite, formal distance. She was glued to her phone, always tilting it away from me. Her work life, once a topic of shared conversation, became a vague, walled-off territory. The late nights became more and more frequent, always blamed on a big project and always involving the same coworker, a director from another department named Greg. I'm not a jealous man. I've always believed in trust. But trust is earned through actions, and her actions were creating a knot of suspicion in my gut that I could no longer ignore. I decided to talk to her about it, not with accusations, but with concern. "Lisa," I started, putting my book down as she dropped her keys in the bowl by the door. "These late nights are getting to be a lot. We barely see each other anymore. Is everything okay at work?" She didn't even look at me. She just sighed, a sound full of theatrical wariness. "It's a huge project, David. I've told you this. It's just what's required right now." "I get that," I said, keeping my voice even. "It just seems to be a lot of time with Greg. I'm starting to feel like a stranger in my own home." That's when she turned. There was no sympathy in her eyes, no understanding, only a flash of pure, unadulterated contempt. She laughed, a short, sharp, ugly sound. "Oh my God," she said, shaking her head in disbelief. "Are you keeping a spreadsheet of my schedule now? Is that what this has come to? That's pathetic." The word hung in the air between us. Pathetic. It wasn't just a denial, it was a character assassination. It was meant to make me feel small, controlling, and foolish for even questioning her. In that single moment, looking at the scorn on her face, I realized that the woman I married was gone. The marriage I was trying to save was already dead. I was just the last one to know. Any love that was left inside me died right there in that cold, silent room. Something inside me went quiet. The hurt was there, but it was quickly being buried by a layer of ice. I looked at her, my face completely blank. "A spreadsheet," I repeated softly. "That's a good idea." I stood up, walked past her without another word, went into our bedroom and closed the door. She probably thought she had won, that she had successfully shamed me into silence. She had no idea what she had just started. She had given me my new mission. The goal was no longer to fix my marriage. The goal was to survive the end of it with my dignity and my finances intact. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I made my first call. I found the name of the top-rated divorce attorney in my city, a man named Mr. Davies, known for his meticulous, no-nonsense approach. I scheduled a consultation for the following day. I didn't tell him I wanted a divorce. I told him I was getting a divorce, and I needed to understand the landscape. At his office, I laid out the situation. The emotional distance, the constant late nights with one specific person, and her contemptuous denial. I told him about the spreadsheet comment. He listened patiently, taking notes. "In this state," he explained, "infidelity can have a significant impact, particularly when it comes to the division of assets and alimony. If you can prove that marital funds were used to facilitate an affair, what we call dissipation of assets, a judge can award a larger portion of the estate to you to compensate. But you need proof, hard, undeniable proof. Suspicions are worthless in court." "So what kind of proof?" I asked. "Receipts, photographs, travel records, witness testimony," he said. "A clear pattern of behavior supported by documentation. It has to be airtight." I nodded slowly. "A spreadsheet. A detailed, documented, airtight spreadsheet." "Okay," I said. "I can do that." I paid his retainer and walked out of his office with a clear set of instructions. Lisa wanted me to feel pathetic. I was about to show her what methodical looked like. Update 1. For the next 3 months, I lived a double life. On the outside, I was the quiet, defeated husband. I stopped asking where Lisa was going. I didn't question her late nights. I became polite and emotionally distant, mirroring her own behavior. To her, it must have looked like her tactic had worked perfectly. She thought she had put me in my place. Her confidence grew, and with it, her carelessness. This was exactly what I was counting on. On the inside, I was an intelligence analyst, and my marriage was the subject of my investigation. The first step was financials. I had full access to all our joint accounts and credit cards online. Every night, after she went to bed, I would go to my home office, close the door, and begin my work. I created a secure, password-protected file on my computer. I named it the Spreadsheet project. I started by combing through months of credit card statements. The pattern emerged almost immediately. On the nights she claimed to be stuck at the office, there were charges that made no sense. There were Uber rides, not from her office to our home, but from her office to a residential address in a completely different part of town. A quick search showed the address belonged to one Gregory Preston, her coworker. There were restaurant bills from upscale places on Tuesday nights for amounts that suggested a dinner for two. There were bar tabs from hotel lounges near her office. There was even a receipt from a high-end lingerie store for items I had certainly never seen. Each transaction was a data point. I logged every single one into my spreadsheet. Date, time, vendor, amount, and a notes column where I detailed the discrepancy. But digital receipts weren't enough. I needed more. Following Mr. Davies' advice, I hired a private investigator. He was a retired police detective, a quiet, older man who radiated competence. I gave him all the information I had gathered. Greg's name, his address, the times and dates of the suspicious Uber rides. I authorized a 2-week surveillance period, focusing only on her movements when she was supposed to be working late. Living in the same house during this time was the hardest part. I had to act normal while my world was being systematically dismantled. I had to make small talk about her day, knowing she was lying. I had to sleep next to her, knowing she had likely just come from being with him. It took every ounce of self-control I had not to confront her, to throw the evidence in her face. But my lawyer's voice was always in my head. Do not engage. Do not reveal what you know. Let her build your case for you. The investigator's first report was delivered to me via a secure email. It was concise, professional, and devastating. He had tailed her from her office on a Thursday night. She didn't go to a work dinner. She went directly to a downtown hotel, the same one where I'd seen bar tabs on our statements. 15 minutes later, Greg's car pulled into the hotel parking garage. The investigator had photographic evidence. Lisa and Greg meeting in the lobby, getting into the elevator together. They didn't emerge until after 1 a.m. The report also included a new, crucial piece of information. The PI had run Greg's license plate. He was married. This wasn't just an affair, it was a conspiracy of 2 cheating spouses. Over the next 2 weeks, the evidence piled up into a mountain. More hotel visits, dinners, a weekend afternoon spent at Greg's house while his wife was apparently out of town. The PI was thorough, providing photos, videos, and detailed logs of her movements. He also uncovered that she had used our joint savings, the money we were putting away for a new roof, to buy Greg a luxury watch for his birthday. It was thousands of dollars. That wasn't just infidelity, it was theft. It was the dissipation of assets Mr. Davies had talked about, in glaring, undeniable detail. By the end of the 3 months, my spreadsheet was no longer just a spreadsheet. It was a comprehensive dossier of deception. It contained financial records, timelines, photographs, video files, and the PI's sworn affidavits. It was a cold, hard, factual account of her secret life. My work was done. It was time to let the lawyers take over. Update 2. The day I decided to act was a Monday. I waited for Lisa to leave for work. Then, I made my move. I had already leased a furnished apartment in a different part of the city. My personal belongings were already packed. A moving company, hired weeks in advance, arrived and cleared out my things in under 2 hours. The last thing I did was place my house key on the clean kitchen counter. For my new apartment, I called Mr. Davies. "I'm out," I said. "It's done. File the papers." The divorce petition was filed that afternoon. 2 days later, a process server walked into Lisa's office and served her with the papers in the middle of her workday. Her call came an hour later. She was screaming. "You filed for divorce? You just left? How could you do this? You're going to destroy my life. You're going to destroy my reputation." It was a masterful performance of a victim. No apology, no remorse, just pure, indignant rage that her comfortable double life had been interrupted. I let her scream until she ran out of breath. Then I responded, my voice as calm as a frozen lake. Lisa, I am following the legal process. Any and all future communication from you needs to be directed to my attorney, Mr. Davies. His contact information is in the papers you received. I am not talking to a lawyer, I am talking to my husband, she shrieked. No, I corrected her gently. You are talking to the man you lied to and stole from for months. The husband is gone. Goodbye. I hung up and blocked her number. The next step was the initial four-way meeting with our respective lawyers. Lisa had hired an aggressive attorney who came out swinging. She sat across the table from me, her face set in a mask of defiant innocence. Her lawyer laid out their demands: half of all assets, including my retirement accounts, permanent spousal support, and for me to pay her legal fees. She was painting herself as the wronged wife, abandoned by a paranoid and unstable husband. She denied everything. The late nights were work. Greg was just a friend, a mentor. The financial discrepancies were misunderstandings. The hotel charges were for work events. Lie after lie, delivered with a straight face. After they had finished their presentation, Mr. Davies leaned forward. He didn't raise his voice. He spoke in a quiet, measured tone. Thank you for that creative piece of fiction, he said to Lisa's lawyer. Now let's talk about reality. He looked at Lisa. My client is not paranoid. He is, however, extremely thorough. For the past 3 months, he has been compiling a document. It details a pattern of behavior that goes far beyond a simple friendship. He has financial statements, travel logs, and extensive evidence from a licensed private investigator. He opened his briefcase and took out a single piece of paper. It was a copy of a hotel folio. He slid it across the table. This is from the Hotel Victoria, dated 3 weeks ago. A room booked and paid for with your joint credit card. Do you recognize it, Mrs. Miller? Lisa glanced at it, and for the first time a flicker of panic appeared in her eyes. And this, Mr. Davies continued, placing a photograph on top of the receipt. It was a crystal-clear shot, taken by the PI, of her and Greg kissing in the hotel parking garage before getting into his car. I assume this was part of the big project you were working on? Lisa went pale. Her lawyer snatched the photo and his jaw tightened. He looked from the photo to his client, and the bravado seemed to drain out of him. We have hours of surveillance footage and hundreds of pages of documentation just like this, Mr. Davies said quietly. We have proof of infidelity and significant dissipation of marital assets, including a $5,000 watch purchased with funds from a joint savings account. Now, would you like to reconsider your initial demand? Or would you prefer for us to present this spreadsheet in open court? The room was silent. Lisa stared at the photo on the table, her mask of innocence shattered. She had mocked me for being pathetic. She had no idea that her own words had forged the weapon that would now dismantle her life. Final update. It has been 6 months since that meeting. I am now officially a divorced man. As it turns out, Lisa and her lawyer chose not to have the spreadsheet presented in open court. After that initial preview of the evidence, their entire strategy collapsed. Her lawyer, realizing he had been lied to and was holding a losing hand, pushed her to settle, and to settle quickly. The depositions were a formality. My lawyer, Mr. Davies, was relentless. He presented a curated selection of the evidence, piece by damning piece. The Uber receipts to Greg's house, the credit card statements for romantic dinners, the PI's photos from outside the hotels, the bank transfer for the luxury watch. Each piece of evidence was a nail in the coffin of her lies. Watching her squirm under questioning, forced to admit to one misunderstanding after another, was a grimly satisfying experience. She had built her world on a foundation of deceit, and now she was watching it crumble under the weight of simple, undeniable facts. The final divorce settlement was a testament to the power of documentation. It was nowhere near the 50-50 split she had initially demanded. The judge took the dissipation of assets very seriously. The thousands of dollars she had spent on her affair, the hotels, the dinners, the gifts, were calculated and deducted directly from her share of the marital estate. Her request for spousal support was denied entirely, with the judge citing her flagrant infidelity and financial misconduct. She walked away with a fraction of what she thought she was entitled to. She was left with her lies and the consequences. The aftermath for her was brutal. Greg's wife, as it turned out, was not the forgiving type. I have no idea how she found out, but I received a letter from her lawyer a month after our divorce was finalized, requesting copies of certain pieces of evidence from my PI's report for use in her own divorce proceedings. Mr. Davies handled it. Greg's affair didn't just cost him his marriage, it cost him dearly in the divorce, and his career reportedly stalled due to the scandal within their company. Lisa's life was also upended. She couldn't afford our house, and she couldn't afford to live on her own in the city. Last I heard, she had moved into a small apartment an hour away. She lost many of her friends, who were appalled when the truth of her long-term calculated deception came out. As for me, I feel a sense of peace I haven't felt in years. The entire process was draining and unpleasant, but it was necessary. I didn't act out of anger or a desire for revenge. I acted out of a need for self-preservation and justice. Her mockery was the catalyst. She called me pathetic for wanting to know the truth. She sarcastically suggested a spreadsheet, and in her arrogance, she handed me the very tool I needed to protect myself. I sold the house. It was full of too many ghosts. I bought a smaller place for myself, and the quiet is a comfort. The spreadsheet, that meticulous chronicle of her betrayal, sits on a password-protected hard drive in my safe. I'll probably never look at it again. I don't need to. I won. Not by yelling or fighting, but by being quiet, methodical, and thorough. I took her insult and turned it into my strategy. It was, without a doubt, the best and most profitable idea she ever gave me.